Welcome to the man who called this game. Gary Danielson joins us now. And Gary, wow, what a game. This was awesome. What was it like watching it from your seat?
I'm even a bit emotional, I have to say. You know, watching players, there's an old saying, you know, the best thing in sports is winning. And the second best feeling is losing. To be able to compete in a game like this and play, I miss it so much. I can relate to Joe Burrow and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and actually even Tua playing injured. You know, it just kind of makes you think back on your own career. I hate when people try to define me. You know, it happened in my career. I know what happened to Burrow. You know, so this is why we all love sports. You guys are right. This is why we watch. You know, there was great play, but the emotions, the competitiveness, the being able to fight back, this was something special.
Gary, what do you love about Joe Burrow's story?
Everything. You know, he grew up in a family that loved football. Dad was a coach. Kind of wanted to go to Nebraska where his brothers went. They didn't want him. Kind of was begging to go to Ohio State because that's where he was from. They kind of recruited him, took him, didn't love him, recruited other players, couldn't win him over. So what does he do? He believes in himself. It's a story. He's going to win the Heisman. If he stays healthy, he's going to win the Heisman Trophy, and I can't think of anyone that's more richly deserving of it.
Well, that was going to be my next question, Gary, but outside of that, going into this ball game, many felt like Tua Tagovailoa was the clear-cut potential first overall selection in this upcoming NFL draft. Do you believe Joe Burrow has done enough to potentially surpass Tua as the top selected player in this upcoming NFL draft?
Maybe. Don't really care, tell you the truth. You know, I mean, whether they go first or second or first and fifth, you know, I mean, Mahomes went 10th. It doesn't really matter. You know, Aaron Rodgers went, 20th? Dan Marino went 18th or 20th. If you're good, you're going to, you know, it's one thing about the NFL. You know, I experienced it. If you can play, they'll find a spot for you. You know, the best guys are going to play. They want to win. So, might happen. I think Joe's going to be in the running for it. Cincinnati, if they get the first pick, they might want the hometown guy. Tua's going to be a great pro. I'm not downgrading your question at all. It's a question that should be asked, but if I was these two guys, whoever wanted me, that's where I'd go play.
Joe Burrow, not your average Joe, putting on a show against Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. Gary Danielson calling the game on CBS. Thank you for sharing the conversation with us. We appreciate it. We'll see you down the road here on CBS Sports HQ, my friend.
All right, thank you.
Let's welcome in CBS Sports college football analyst Barrett Sallee. And Barrett, you were one of the people that had the over hitting in this game. Before we start to break this down, your initial reaction to what you saw there in Tuscaloosa.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that LSU controlled it throughout. I mean, this is a team that in this game, every single year since 2011 has come in conservative, almost come in scared, and Joe Burrow and Ed Orgeron were not scared. I think the key part of this game was actually on the first drive after Tua fumbled. Joe Burrow 3 of 3, and that set the tone for the entire game. If you can set the pace, then you're going to win more times than not, and LSU did. So it goes back to something that we've talked about really since the beginning of the season, really since we were all in Austin for week 2 against Texas, is that LSU is the aggressor now. They play their style of football, and they start it right out of the gate. They dictate tempo, and to do it in this spot, in this stadium, in the game of the century part 2, I think it speaks volumes as to where this program is. And you heard Dennis with Ed Orgeron there a minute ago. Ed Orgeron deserves the most credit of all of these people because he swallowed his pride. He was a defensive-minded coach that said, hey, you know what? We're not just going to go be offensive. We're not just going to go be dynamic. We're going to bring Big 12 football to the SEC, and they've done it. And I think it never was more apparent than that first drive of the game when Joe Burrow goes 3 of 3. That is the most important sequence of this game because at that point, Alabama was playing catch-up.
Barrett, you cover the SEC extensively. You know what LSU looked like last season. They bring in Joe Brady to be the passing game coordinator from the New Orleans Saints. What has changed for this team from last season to this season?
Well, the tempo is huge, but you never used to see LSU in 4 wide sets, in empty sets. And this year, you see them in 5-man protection schemes more times than not. In fact, last game, I don't know what the stats were this game, but last game, they had 5 blockers in on 75% of the snaps. That's rare because last year they kept 6 in with the running back. They kept 7 in with the tight end. Now they're counting on Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a receiver. Now they're counting on Thaddeus Moss as a receiver. You never used to see running backs as receivers and tight ends as receivers in the old school LSU offense. So the tempo and the fact that they trust their offensive line and exclusively their offensive line to protect Joe Burrow, I think speaks volumes because it puts so much stress on opposing secondaries, not just Alabama secondaries, but opposing secondaries everywhere to say, hey, look, if you got Justin Jefferson, you got Jamar Chase, you got Terrace Marshall, you've got Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield, there's just not enough talent to cover these guys, and that's what's made LSU so different this year.
You've watched Joe Burrow multiple times live in person. What impresses you the most about Joe Burrow?
Tough as nails. Tough as nails. We can sit here and talk about his talent, his arm talent, how the NFL scouts love him, and how the players rally behind him, but it's his simple toughness. He needs to get hit in order to feel like a part of the game. He brings that linebacker mentality. So, yes, he's a proven leader. And, yes, he has all of these physical skills. And, yes, he's got all these receivers and this great scheme. But the dude takes a licking every single game and wants it. He needs it, and he thrives off of it. And that's the biggest thing, is that you need a guy like that to be a championship caliber team. And Joe Burrow is that guy. It's not just the talent, it's the heart. He's the heart and the soul of this program, and he's been that way from the moment he got there. But now in this offense, he understands, you know what? He's going to be in the face of danger when pressure comes. He doesn't care. In fact, he thrives when pressure gets in his face.
The story we were talking about coming into this game was the health of Tua Tagovailoa, coming off of surgery just 20 days ago. If he had been 100% for this game, would we be talking perhaps about a different outcome in Tuscaloosa?
No. He's not the better quarterback. Healthy or not, Joe Burrow's a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa. LSU has a better system than Alabama, and Alabama right now with Tua Tagovailoa is rather limited. I think this game, Tua could have played his tail off. Would Joe Burrow have cared? No, he wouldn't have cared. I think there was one instance where maybe Tua's injury came into play, and that was in the fourth quarter on that 4th down. He had a wide-open running lane. He didn't take it, and he tried to get it out to Najee Harris, I believe, by the pylon, and it got tipped. That's the one time where I thought that maybe Tua's injury was going to limit him. But LSU's a better football team. I don't care what people say. LSU's a better football team. Alabama's defense has been a liability all year. LSU's hasn't been that much of a liability. Tua now, I think, in a game like this, with an offense like LSU's, Tua's going to have to put up 40 points. And Alabama's running game hasn't been consistent, and I think a defense like LSU was able to slow down that RPO game. They played it perfectly. They tackled in space. So tackling in space has nothing to do with Tua Tagovailoa. If he hits those slants and those guys get tackled, they get tackled. There's nothing he can do about that.
Barrett, big picture here. What's your biggest takeaway from this game?
LSU is the best team in the nation, and it's not even close. I mean, with this kind of offense, to be able to go into this setting and do what they did to completely dismantle an Alabama team that hasn't lost on this field since 2015, that there's no question. LSU is the best team in the country. Think about this. In the first half, LSU scored 33 points. That's the most a Nick Saban coached team has given up in the first half since 1999, and a guy named Drew Brees, a 20-year-old Drew Brees who couldn't even drink yet, was the guy who did it when Purdue beat Michigan State in 1999. So for LSU to do this, it's confirmation that their offensive renaissance is the most important story perhaps in college football in a decade, because LSU's always had the athletes. Now they've got the scheme. And right now, when you can do this to a team like Alabama on the road with not only your offense but your defense making play after play after play against Tua in the first half, LSU's the best team in the nation. I don't care what Ohio State did to Maryland. I don't care what Ohio State has done from an offensive perspective. This team right now is the #1 team in the nation, and it's not even close.
Boom. Boom. Barrett Sallee dropping the mic. Not literally, but figuratively. Thanks for holding on to the mic. Great segment here on CBS Sports
I can do it
HQ.
literally if you want me to.
Well, I don't want us to get in any trouble with our equipment, because the equipment is expensive here, and I don't want to say go ahead and do that, and then I got to pay for it. I'm not doing that. Alabama had won 31 straight home games. Barrett Sallee covering it there for us in Tuscaloosa. Barrett, great job. Appreciate it.